Welcome back, everybody, to the Alyosha Society. We pursue truth, we pursue goodness, and we pursue beauty through great literature. This is 10 out of 10. This is the final video going through Michael Shara's Pulitzer Prize winning novel, Killer Angels. This is going to be a very brief one. You probably already noticed that. Just kind of want to bring everything together, tie it all up, and yeah, so let's do that very quickly here. So making sure that everybody's on the same page. You have hopefully been following the videos here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have walked through Monday. We talked about the spy. We then skipped Tuesday because, yeah, troops were mainly just marching. There were just movement of troops, so not a lot to talk about there. We talked about Wednesday. Yeah, by the end of the day, everything's looking pretty strong. Robert E. Lee's feeling fairly confident at the end of the day on Wednesday. But some things happened on Wednesday evening that spilled over into Thursday, July the 2nd. Then we spent 2 days talking about Friday, July the 3rd. And we wrapped it up with Pickett's charge. Now, you'll notice that one thing I did not do here, and I'm going to kind of sort of try to make up for it now. Remember our literary toolbox. So these are the 5 things that you would look at when you're studying any book. Doesn't matter. Any book, any genre. Is there a plot arc? Is there historical context? Biographical context, that is, of the author mainly. Genre questions, which we have not done, and I'm going to do in this video, and literary devices. We didn't focus a lot on literary devices, not quite as important in this particular work of historical fiction. But I do want to just make a quick comment about elements of a plot. Now, why did I not talk about that so much? Well, first of all, this particular work of historical fiction is focused on an event that actually happened. So the author isn't making up a story that might fit that, remember the 5 the parts of the plot arc. You have the introduction, then you have the rising action, then you have the climactic moment of the story, then you have falling action, then you have the resolution. Those are the 5 parts of a standard plot. Well, we're talking about a historical event here. So that's why I didn't really spend a lot of time on that. But hey, just for fun, I think it's important to point out that the Battle of Gettysburg, as I think Dr. Wilsey brought out very nicely in our discussions, the Battle of Gettysburg is really itself sort of the climactic moment of the American Civil War. I think that's clear. Now, what would be the climactic moment of the Battle of Gettysburg? Did you pick up on that? I think different historians actually may make a case for different aspects of those 3 days, but you certainly could make a case for what happened on Friday, Pickett's charge. Yeah, and Dr. Wilsey talked a lot about that final charge and how that was really the defining moment. Of the Battle of Gettysburg. So what I want to talk about here are the genre questions. Now, remember what I'm doing here at the Alyosha Society. I am not merely looking at a book and telling you what it says, because you can go to SparkNotes or Wikipedia or any number of other websites to find that out. I'm not here to do something that you can get anywhere else. What I want to do is I'm here more to equip you and teach you how to use tools to be a better reader yourself. Yeah, that's different. That's a skill. That's not just information. It's, so these are the 5 tools that are in our literary toolbox and genre questions. So we've already done we already done the others for the most part. What do I mean by genre questions? Well, the genre questions, so whatever the genre is, poem, epic, novel, historical fiction, whatever the case may be, I have a set of questions, like standard questions. They would be the same for any work of that genre that you should ask. So here are the questions that I came up with for historical fiction. So in other words, anytime you're reading a work of historical fiction, these are good questions to ask. So what is the event that's being featured? Now, what are some other works of historical fiction that you may have done either in this course or a similar course? Well, we did Johnny Tremaine. I know we did that one in the Great Books 3 for students. So some of you may have done Johnny Tremaine. So think about it. That's a work of historical fiction. What the characters in the story are not real, and the events are also mostly not true historical events, but the event itself, the war, that did happen. So you see, works of historical fiction are going to have sort of different levels of, well, how much is the historical part and how much is the fiction part? It's something that's important to talk about. And I'm going to get to that a little bit more in a minute. So why would the author write about this event? Ooh, now that, I think that's an interesting question. See, the author could have an agenda. The author may be living hundreds of years after the historical event. You know, that's the backdrop for the novel. But the author might have an agenda or some sort of bone to pick. That's kind of what an agenda is what we used to say when I was growing up. Some kind of message that he or she wants to communicate, and they're using that historical event to do it. So in this particular novel, is that the case? Well, I'm going to come out and say I don't think it is. I don't believe that Michael Shara, that I know of, has some sort of, political or otherwise any other kind of agenda that he's trying to push on the readers. When you look at his life, he actually traveled. At one point, he visited Gettysburg and he went to the battlefield. And what he saw when he stood in the midst of this massive tract of land, he was moved. He was inspired. He was in awe of what happened there. And that inspired him to write the book. If he had not visited the battlefield, I don't know that he would have written this book. So I think that's a good reason, for someone to write a work of historical fiction. So is the portrayal of the historical events accurate? Well, you saw the videos with Dr. John Wilsey, and you've heard me say it. By all accounts, Michael Shara gets an A+ on this one. Yeah, I think he does. The historical events are very accurate, and he himself said, and I think it's borne out in the story, he used as many documents, and we call them primary source documents. That's the word we use for it. That is not things that other people have written about an historical event, but documents that were written at the same time as the historical event. So that would include the things that Michael Shara looked up were things like letters, for example, and any kind of writings done by any of the individuals who were there. And I think that roll up your sleeves and get down into the nitty-gritty kind of research is what makes The Killer Angels a very accurate work of historical fiction. Now, that doesn't mean, we already said this, that every single conversation that's in the story was word for word that way. No. We already said that's not the case. He had to make that part up. But even those conversations are definitely what we might call plausible. They're believable. They're consistent with what that person might have said or did say or could have said in that setting. Now, next question. When is the action in the novel occurring in relation to the historical event? So that's when you're reading a work of historical fiction, you want to find out, well, wait a second. Okay, the historical part of it happened in the 1860s, but when did the author live? That's kind of important in better understanding it. Did the author live in the 1870s? Well, then you're going to understand that book way different than you would, someone who lived at a different time period or even in a different place. Michael Shara, this book was published in 1974. We already said that. He won the Pulitzer Prize for this book in 1975. So, in some cases, I'm not going to get into this a whole lot now, but in some cases, you might then do a little bit of research and find out, okay, what was going on in 1974 in America that may have influenced Michael Shara's perception. And you see what I'm saying? So that is right at the end of the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War. So you see, Michael Shara could have written The Killer Angels as a sort of a piece with a political agenda, either pro or anti-Vietnam War. And you kind of use the historical event to get across your message, your point, your agenda that's actually contemporary to the author. I just don't believe there's any evidence that Michael Shara did that, and that's a good thing. That means it's a more reliable work of historical fiction. And we've already answered this last question. Is he using the historical event to make a statement? I don't think so. I don't think so. But you know what? Even if he were, it's not that we wouldn't read it. It's just that it's good to know that going into it. You see what I'm saying? Nothing wrong with that. That's happened all throughout history. Dramatists, playwrights, novelists have written novels in their own time about historical events and in particular wars in a way to protest a current conflict that's going on during the time period of the author. You see how that can be a little tricky. These are just good questions to ask in better understanding this particular genre. All right. And I think what I did here, friends, is I got a little bit ahead of myself. The literary toolbox, I already did the elements of the plot. Yeah. So climax of the American Civil War, I think, the rising action would be, do you remember the first two videos that we did? Do you remember the 5 pressures, the 3 mini sparks, and then the climactic moment, I think, comes when Abraham Lincoln is elected, and then the climactic moment of the whole war, I believe, is the Battle of Gettysburg. And then the climactic moment of the Battle of Gettysburg, I think you can make a good case that it would be Pickett's charge on Friday. So there you go. So we've done our literary toolbox. We've gone all the way around the clock on that. We've answered all of our questions. We've walked through the book Monday, skip Tuesday, Wednesday, July 1, Thursday, July 2, Friday, July 3. I hope you enjoyed the interview and the discussions with Dr. John Wilsey. I have to tell you, it's quite a treat and a privilege to have someone of his caliber coming into this environment with his knowledge and his total grasp of not only the events, but cause and effect and the importance of them in the big picture. So I hope you enjoyed that time we had with John Wilsey. So that brings us to the end of video 10. Friends, I've enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. I really did. I hope that you've had as much fun as I did walking through Michael Shara's book, The Killer Angels. Friends, whatever book it is you're starting next, I'll see you then.